Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining our session today. Thank you for taking your time. Today we're going to talk about building with a distributed mindset. We have a whole slate of topics here to talk about. We're going to talk about data, the role of the cloud, and we're going to talk a fair amount about Cockroach Labs and Google Cloud Platform as well. And these are my two guests. So my two guests, welcome to the session. Hello, Spencer.
Hi, Jim. Thanks for having me.
Hi, Ritika. How are you?
Very well, thanks. Thanks for having me too.
Well, thanks for joining today, y'all. I should introduce myself. My name is Jim Walker. I'm actually a member of the Cockroach Labs team, but today I'm just a moderator and an MC. So I'm here to help guide the conversation with our speakers here. Just by way of introductions, let's go. Ritika, can you just give a quick introduction of yourself and your role and what you're excited about on this session today?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Thanks so much, Jim. So my name is Ritika Suri, and I am a director at Google Cloud, leading our tech partnerships and specifically databases and DevOps and Cloud Ops. I'm really excited to talk to you and our audience about distributed systems. We are passionate about open cloud platforms. So without getting too much into it right in the introduction, that is what excites me, and that's what keeps me going every day. One thing I wanted to say, I just recently did my DNA testing. And one interesting thing that I found out was that I have 90% more Neanderthal blood or genes, you want to call it, than others in their population. And one of the genes that they're known for is resilience. So tying back to databases, I think, I hope that I have the resilience to understand how databases work in a distributed environment.
Well, that's apropos. I mean, we're going to talk about resilience today. So I have nothing exciting other than, you know what, I'm too into, I love distributed systems as well. So I got nothing beyond that. So thank you, Ritika. Spencer, as well, can you give a quick introduction and what you're excited about to talk about today?
Sure. Well, my name is Spencer Kimball. I'm one of the co-founders of Cockroach Labs and also the CEO. And before that, I was at Google, which I think we'll touch on in today's session, because there's some nice resonance there in terms of my career. I'm excited today to really highlight the partnership that we have with GCP. It's valuable to us, and I think it's very valuable to our customers. So that's good. Of course, I'm always excited to tell people about CockroachDB, why we built it, and really what it can do for companies that use it. And I actually also have sort of higher than average Neanderthal DNA, at least according to 23andMe, if you trust that. So I think we might come from the same ancestral stock, Ritika.
Yeah, that's fascinating, isn't it?
Well, I think I'm gonna have to get my 23andMe done and see if I'm part Neanderthal. I don't know. I'm pretty resilient. I don't know. So. Thank you both for joining. I think this is going to be a great conversation. We have it kind of broken down in a couple different parts. We're going to start talking about distributed systems and data and things, and that's what I think we're all here to talk about. But we wanted to get into some of the technical details and talk about somebody who's doing this, using Google Cloud and CockroachDB and some of the value as well. And at the end, we'll give a little insight into the future as well, where we think this is all headed as well. So it gives you a quick kind of outline of what we're doing. So. Ritika, let's just kick off the conversation with you. There's this term called digital transformation, which for years I kind of was like, oh man, what does that mean? We're all transforming, right? Like I think, I don't know. I guess I've just been in tech for so long that I feel digitally transformed myself a little bit. But I think there's just so many companies out there that are going through these steps to become kind of digital native and cloud native and move in this direction. I think it's become a critical part of everybody's strategy. How do you define this concept, from the Google side?
Yeah, no, thank you for that question, Jim. So, as we all know, the global pandemic has challenged the status quo. It's redefined how we work, making it less about where we work from and more about the quality of experiences. Whether you're building a system or you're running an operations, it's really that rich experience that each of us is looking for to get the productivity we need. Digital no longer is a luxury. In many cases, it has become an existential imperative. I'm purposely using the word existential, tying back to the Neanderthals. But so we saw, at least in the last few years, and especially accelerated in the last 2 years, thanks to the pandemic, more and more companies conducting their annual Black Friday sales almost entirely online, retailers adopting and needing to adopt omni-channel and giving the same experiences over different platforms, needing to do supply chains which are much more flexible. Banks have never seen so much real-time interaction as they see today. And even if you look at people engaging in online and gaming services and streaming, it has been like never before. More customers are looking to accelerate their move to the cloud and partner on their digital transformation. Digital innovators understand the power of having resilient, mission critical systems that can run business reliably and securely, and how digital technologies like AI, machine learning, big data, and analytical tools can be used to power innovation. We at Google have had deep investments, as you may know, over the past 23 years in technical infrastructure. Our cloud platform is designed to help enterprises transform through digitization. And at the heart of all of this is data. Data is the reason why businesses can transform. And during the pandemic, as I gave in the examples above, we've seen how organizations have turned to data to drive impressive change. Leveraging data to make decisions is absolutely non-negotiable in this world where quick innovation and iteration is required to keep up with competition. So where does this lead us? Digital transformation has become a priority as business leaders are definitely realizing that the value of data-driven decisions has become more important than ever before.
Yeah, and I think it's exactly right. I think Ritika, going back 2 years now, we're 2 years after the pandemic started. And I think at the beginning of the pandemic, it's kind of like the analog world ended, right? Like, it's kind of like, well, if you weren't digital, what was the analog world and what did, brick and mortar mean for those moments in time? And I think it's accelerated a lot of this stuff, but you bring up a really good point. And I think, the data side of things is something that I've always been in. I've been in data my whole career almost, I guess, and I think in this new world where we all are kind of like chasing down this, honestly, what Google has done the last 15 years, 20 years is kind of reinvent the way we think about infrastructure, and data being a big piece of that, right? Like, I think that's such a big deal. And, Spencer, you kind of had a little bit of a front row seat on all of that, right? And so, what's your view of data? As at Google, you kind of saw the transformed world, you know what I mean? Like, and I think we're moving towards that. So how do you look at it?
Well, I will say that this digital transformation, for me, certainly had its roots in the we call it the .com boom. Right, that was also when I roughly started at Google, but I didn't pay too much attention to data infrastructure as a problem before I got out into the real world. But as soon as I got my first job, and forever thereafter, it's been 25 years, data has been the chief problem that needed to be solved. And it's scale in terms of data intensivity, it's scale in terms of geographic reach. And to Ritika's point, I mean, every single occupation out there that's in the sort of modern knowledge economy makes its decisions and bases them fundamentally on data. And the more data you have, the better your decision making. And frankly, if you don't have, a reasonable modicum of data, I don't believe that you can succeed in these new fields. And that could be things like product managers. How do you build a product? You can't do that unless you're actually getting very detailed signals from your customers. And there's also the idea of someone that's a salesperson. That's not necessarily traditionally been something that relied so heavily on data, but boy, it is now. Where do you look? What are the analytics that actually point you in the right direction? How do you score 30,000 prospective accounts to find which ones have these very minute signals, even like job postings? They have the words in job postings. So data is incredibly important. And one of our venture capitalists, Mike Volpe at Index Ventures, recently made some pretty astute observations about this. When you look at the just database market for operational databases, like traditionally Oracle, now CockroachDB is one of the newer entrants into this landscape. That market is something like $50 or $60 billion a year. But it's, to base the future of what's going to happen in the next 10 years on the current state of things is something of a mistake, because it's not a linear extrapolation, which is how our minds work. It's really a vast, exponential increase in just how much data there is. And fundamentally, what's driving that is how useful it is. So we collect everything now. We collect every keystroke, every little bit of signal we can get that indicates intent or interest. And that's fundamentally what's driving transformation. And if any company in any vertical fails to pay attention to these and leverage these signals, they're going to lose to their competitors. So that really just is creating a much bigger market, much faster than what we've seen in the past. So it's a very exciting time, and that's fundamentally the challenges that we saw. And I say we, the three co-founders at Cockroach, while we were at Google. And then when we left, we realized, wow, Google solved things that are pretty fundamental. And we would like to bring some of those same ideas specifically to databases in open source and to a very, very broad audience. So that was the start of our journey. And so there's a lot of alignment between what we're building and how Google sees the world for obvious reasons.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, Spencer. A friend of mine used to say it's like we're kind of living in this world where it's going to be like Google infrastructure for everybody else. You know what I mean? Like I think a lot of that stuff that's been built out, and it's like this. It's the right platform in so many ways, and I think this set of tooling and database solutions and everything else gets really interesting. And so, Ritika, 10 years on after Spencer kind of was, in the middle of all the stuff being built out and everything, what's the approach today? I mean, because you're doing it not just for the internal programmers who are, building Google infrastructure, but this is, for the broad everybody, right? Like, and so what's kind of the approach from the Google Cloud point of view?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, I'm going to hinge on the word data again, because transformation starts with databases and transformation hinges on choosing the right database. Your database can either empower your community or it can be a real bottleneck. And the journey of data actually starts in databases. If you think about it, the data is stored in the database. So like never before, I think it has become very imperative to choose the right database for the right use case that you're trying to serve the right experience. So the power of your application absolutely resides in choosing the right databases. And with the growth of data and users and use cases, databases have never been more challenged, right? We were the first cloud provider with a clear multi-cloud strategy with a consistent developer experience built on open source to write once and deploy anywhere. And to your point, Jim, that is what we are looking to do for the community in terms of offering different sort of partner solutions and our own native solutions, whether it has to do with management of databases or tooling, or even having use cases that run on the edge. So last we announced Google Distributed Cloud, a portfolio of hardware and software solutions that extend our infrastructure to the edge and into the customer's own data center with the best of class hardware and software from both Google and our partners. We realize that we have one of the best infrastructures, the most secure with a rock solid foundation. And we want to make and extend that platform available to not only our customers, but also the developer community. We have one of the richest developer communities on Google platform. So through our open cloud infrastructure, we made the path to whether you need to migrate or modernize, easy with migration tools, serverless options, container capabilities, and also managed services to help build more experiences and better experiences to manage your operations. Our customers that we've seen are able to then accelerate their journeys and more importantly, focus on what is required in terms of speed, scalability, and agility. And this, we feel, put together is very transformative to innovate at scale.
Yeah, and I think it's, Spencer, you and I have had conversations about this a lot. I mean, it's directly aligned with the database side of things, right?
Absolutely. And what we're discovering as a business, Cockroach Labs, is that there's a fundamental inflection point in the growth of cloud, and part of that is being driven not just by the growth of the sort of born in the cloud companies, which is fast growing, exponential, but it's also the companies that have extremely high value use cases that represent trillions of dollars in value that have been using traditional platforms and that are making that digital transformation. And the opportunity there is a little bit more complex. And these are legacy use cases at extremely high value. They do need to be migrated, but they often have lots of integration points with existing systems, mainframes, things that are more difficult to move. And that really necessitates the idea of hybrid. And also many of these companies, and this actually applies to now the born in the cloud ones, which is different from 10 years ago, but sort of across the different segments in the market, there's an understanding that putting all your eggs into any single vendor or saying that it's all going to move out of private data centers isn't really a very attractive option anymore. People want to keep that flexibility. And that's really been Google's approach. And I think it serves customers well. When we think about the real challenges there, there's a lot of To us, it really is about how do we enable companies to move to global scale, and we define that in really two ways. It's how much data, and now you're able to serve, maybe some fraction of the world's 7 billion people. Maybe that's hundreds of millions of people. So you're talking about incredible data intensity, but it actually goes beyond that in terms of what the database is now required to do. It's also about non-human agents. So these can be virtual agents. They can be devices that kind of form what IoT means, right? And all of these are interacting with backend APIs, and those backend APIs are fundamentally interacting with databases. So you're not talking about, I kind of use this example. There's maybe 100 million desktops back in the day when that was common. Now there's billions of cell phones, but now there's going to be tens or hundreds of billions, maybe even trillions of other things that are non-human, that are operating at machine speeds, that are interacting with these APIs, fundamentally hitting the database. In many use cases, we have a big delivery company that uses Cockroach. In the course of servicing one single order, they can hit the database thousands, even tens of thousands of times. So this data intensivity is a problem that's just affecting use cases across the board, across verticals. And then global is another big thing, because even a startup right out of the gate wants to succeed where they can succeed, where the user is going to have critical mass. Let's say you're building a multiplayer game. If Brazil happens to be where people really catch on to your game, you sure want to give them a great user experience. And it's hard to give folks in South America a great user experience if the only place that you really can deploy or that your database works is a single location, and that you might have chosen to just be a data center in Virginia. So really thinking globally is also something that clearly a big multinational has to deal with. But increasingly, it's just every startup out there in the world. And so choosing a platform which really can leverage the resources you already have deployed, wherever those are, private data centers in cases of some of these older companies, but also a platform that isn't going to be really prejudicial about making sure everything's within a walled garden and a single vendor, right? But that is truly open, and so that you have that flexibility. And of course, there's been a number of fairly high profile outages, and you realize, when you really care about availability, you have to start thinking about how do you balance risk between vendors? How do you really make the best use of the entire public cloud, not just having to choose something that becomes too particular? And so that's really what we're trying to enable our customers to make the best use of. And it also feels, from everything we've seen in all of the products, especially something like Anthos that's come out of GCP, that's their fundamental belief about the world as well.
Yeah, and it has been. I mean, I think Google has, shown this to the world, that they're very open, not just from kind of the technology that they've given to the world. I mean, if you think about like NoSQL databases, and oh boy, man, the entire like Hadoop movement was kind of jettisoned. It was Google exhaust, we used to call that, right? Like it's been incredible, this move towards Kubernetes and cloud native. It's just like there's just some amazing engineers doing such cool stuff, but there's amazing engineers doing really cool stuff in the open, which to me is like, I think the most important part of it. I'm kind of an open source person, so I think that's just incredible. But I think, Ritika, it extends to like the way you partner as well, right? I mean, I think it's a critical piece, right? We love it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you touched on it, and also Spencer touched on it. And I want to pick up the thread on that lock-in. We believe that we don't want to lock in our customers. There are different scenarios, like you talked about the Brazil use case. We believe that we want everyone to land on Google platform and use the right use case or the technology or the tool set that is needed for it. So providing customers choice and completeness is central to our cloud strategy. We are committed, and we continue to remain committed to open cloud ecosystems. In January, in fact, we announced that we are doubling our investment in partners in alignment with our goal to be the best, most partner-friendly cloud. And also, while we are most partner-friendly, we also want it profitable to be to our partners. So we continue to invest in like key phases of a sales cycle with our partners, with go-to-market incentives like MDFs or market development funds, demand gen programs. But we also are trying to drive success for our partners on our platform. So together with ISVs like Cockroach Lab, we are able to provide some differentiation or a unique accelerated value to our customers by offering them choice and flexibility on our platform. We also offer our own services, but we believe in that philosophy of coexistence and putting the right use case in front of the right customer for the right product. that's kind of central to, again, our cloud, open cloud ecosystem strategy. And here, I think it ties in pretty well with Cockroach Lab's value proposition about open distributed databases to meet the customer where they are in their digital journey.
Yeah, and it's a freedom to use the tools you want to use and not be locked into one set. And I think that's one of the. I mean, it's just Ritika. This partnership is just so important for us because I think our customers are turning to you all because it's such a great place to be, and they want to use the right tools for the right job or what what I mean. I think, and that's competitive advantage, right? I think it's really, really critical. And I think, I've seen this kind of go down with a lot of our customers. And, I'll get it back to you, Spencer. But I think, we made a choice to actually deploy our own kind of dedicated version of CockroachDB, our managed service on GCP. And even for us, it was the right fit, correct?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, we've had a very, very long association with Google, and kind of in support of some of the comments you made in a previous question about Google's approach to open source. That's something that's really been building since we left Google, and the investment in the 10 years since we've been gone has been enormous. I mean, Kubernetes is an amazing example. TensorFlow, another really incredible example. And even before that, if Google didn't have open source, it was white papers. And everyone learned from those white papers. And I definitely need to mention that CockroachDB is absolutely inspired by Google Spanner. That is what we saw being built in our final maybe 5 years of working at Google, and it was clearly an amazing point in the solution space of how you build databases that was absolutely influenced and really targeted at Google's what they saw as the huge challenges and opportunities and the many use cases that they were deploying and continue to deploy. So there was I think a difficult solution space to traverse, and they found a point in it that really accommodated a wide variety of use cases. So we learned from them, and people and the entire ecosystem learned from them. And so when we left, that the absence of those tools is really what compelled us to create CockroachDB as a project and then build it into a company. And as we were in that initial stages, for those in the audience that are entrepreneurs and have started their own company, they're probably aware that the cloud vendors, I think Azure, AWS, and GCP all do give credits. And for us to use GCP credits, that was sort of the no-brainer in that first step because we were so familiar with what how Google thought about things and the tools that they provided. We ended up, of course, using all the cloud credits that were available to us, which is also important because we do believe in making Cockroach work in every environment. But that familiarity with Google's mindset and the resonance that our mindset has with Google's mindset really has continued that pattern of really feeling comfortable in the GCP ecosystem. And all of the tools have the same kind of distributed mindset. It's not just Spanner and Cockroach that are like that. It's all the tools. They all work that way. They all accommodate scale first and foremost because that's how Google had to build things. Because every use case Google has to deal with that problem in particular. And again, it's data intensity and global geographic scale. So that made and continues to make the partnership very valuable to us. We know that what we build is going to not just work well in Google's ecosystem, but work with any customer that trusts Google's ecosystem, because they're going to have a similar mindset. They're going to be used to those kinds of tools and patterns, and all of these things need to work together if you're truly going to build ambitious, world-changing applications.
Yeah, and it's interesting, Spencer. I often talk to people. I'm like, you want a coursework in distributed systems? Go read the Google white papers by like Jeff Dean and Sanjay Gemalot. If anybody wants to really I mean those two, their names are over a lot. We just mentioned all their projects. It's amazing what they've done, right? And not everybody can employ those guys, right?
Yeah, they're the best. They
really are, and
they continue.
And I do everything I can to get their name everywhere because I think they're heroes. Honestly, I live in their world. I think sometimes, But I think it's, I think Google innovates and does all these things, but Google also provides a whole lot of value to the customer through the partner network as well. Non-technical, right, Ritika? I mean, I think you're pushing in ways that I think is unique, and for our customers, we see that they definitely see that value as well, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So we offer the same partner incentive that we would offer to the customer. So we're treating them the same way. So whether it is SaaSification, migration funds, whatever helps to deliver, really serve our customers' growth and cloud journeys, those rich experiences, we are happy to invest in that. We also have an accelerated distribution channel through the Google Marketplace to make it really seamless for our customers to manage, procure, get billing and support through our marketplace. In fact, just last week, Sundar shared in our earnings that we saw the number of customers spending more than $1 million on our Google Marketplace more than double. We also see the influence of a marketplace where, customers are spending much more money and all our partners are offering their managed services there. So we were very excited, when CockroachDB decided to launch their service on Google Marketplace. And then also we are looking at distribution models. We talked a little bit about scale and region. So regional availability, whether you're a cloud native or a legacy workload, is really important. So from that point of view, having our solutions run or letting our partners offer these solutions across a hybrid, multi-cloud, at edge, in line with sovereignty, GDPR. I mean, there's so many requirements. So having a same distribution channel across these multitude of environment, I think is key. And even for customers to procure that and make it seamless to us is really important. And then on the partner side, the non-technical gives a little bit, Jim, that I can talk about is many partners do not have a SaaSification or a managed service first approach. So we help them, even our partners, to offer their products and go through that journey on Google platform, whether it's with tools to manage cloud ops, have Cloud Run running for you, or it is to do with BigQuery in terms of analytical tools. So all these integrations, which also become a unique differentiation for the partner to shine a light on themselves on our platform, we help them through this journey in a very clear and well-defined path by making investments where we need to work with these partners to, again, help our joint customers.
Yeah, and God only knows SaaSification is a tough one, Ritika. Speaking from experience here, I mean, all right, Spencer, CockroachDB was not simple to build, but building a SaaS version of what you have and that, it's almost like it's its own company sometimes. And I think the right set of tooling and the right kind of go-to-market, you talk about things like Cloud Run and some of these other things. I think it's it helps accelerate, and it really helps us as kind of ISVs or anybody deploying an application get there a lot quicker. Because it just does all come together. So I want to turn it a little bit. I'm just a little wary of time. I do want to turn a little bit into one of our joint customers and what they're doing. One of our joint customers, y'all, we've been working with them for a while. I think they've been with GCP for quite some time, longer than us, actually. Mythical Games is one of these customers. It's a small gaming company. They have a couple of different games. Blanco's Block Party. I don't know if anybody out there plays that. I'm not a real big gamer. But gaming in particular is kind of one of these verticals that kind of exposes a lot of these things, right? Like a lot of these challenges that we're talking about, right? And so, what did kind of Mythical Games turn to GCP for in the first place, Ritika?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, Mythical Games is an existing customer of Google before we introduced CockroachDB to them. And they, like you mentioned, smallish gaming company, but very powerful because they're the pioneer of player-owned economies. I don't know if you all are familiar with that, but they really pioneered that concept. Gaming is a very key and deep industry vertical for us. So they were very keen to be on Google Cloud, obviously from an infrastructure point of view, from not having like we talked about, a cloud platform lock-in. Our open cloud strategy was extremely appealing to them, but also alongside what we were able to offer to them was our industry knowledge in gaming. So like I mentioned, gaming is a huge vertical. So different frameworks or tools and methodologies, insights into gaming and how we serve our gaming customers was rather important. As they start seeing growth, we were talking about during the pandemic, streaming has become and gaming has become pretty large. They started seeing rising costs in their cost per player. And they were needed to scale to multiple regions, multiple continents to reach more users. At this time, having downtimes or not being able, having failover solutions became really critical to them. And lastly, they also wanted a platform which was attractive to the developer community. They wanted a developer platform, if you want to call it, which is easy to use, scalable, and helps attract talented developers. So together with the best of the technology infrastructure from Google, deep industry footprint from us, and a seamlessly integrated cloud platform, they were looking at a distributed database along with our platform that could work seamlessly and could be extended and be flexible for their needs. And that's where I think CockroachDB fit in pretty well.
Yeah, absolutely. They first of all, this is an incredible example, I think, of the right way to approach Web3. Right, one of the laudable goals in that whole concept is money from creators typically used to accrue to the platforms, and now with these blockchain-based schemes around ownership and essentially royalties, for lack of a better term. There's an opportunity for creators to be properly rewarded for the work they're doing. So I think this is the start of something really big, because these game-based economies are pretty fantastically large, and that growth, like everything in data, seems to be exploding. They were actually very interested in Cockroach. One of the big problems that they're looking for us to solve is availability. Like, they wanted to make sure that they could do upgrades, maintenance on the system with complete continuity, business continuity, which is incredibly important. Anyone that's played one of these games and really invested a lot of their time and effort knows how important availability is. You want to get as close to 100% uptime. You certainly want to make that theoretically 100%. The reality is, bugs and things can take it down, but you really want to work to minimize that. And that really keeps players loyal. Big downtimes can create just sort of a shift in interest that can compound. So that was one of the big things that they wanted: just user happiness, business continuity, and that's one of the key attributes of Cockroach. It's why it's called Cockroach. They also were interested in scale, and in particular global scale. On the global part, multi-regions, really spreading it across, is not something that the first version has built, but it's something that they're very keen to build. So that was an example of sort of planning ahead and looking at Cockroach's capabilities and planning, on infrastructure that was really going to enable that future goal for them. But it's also just the sheer problem of scale. Games can get very, very large, and of course, players come from everywhere. So these two problems together, they wanted to make sure that the solution they chose was really going to scale with them, and scale with them in the context of each game individually. And so that made Cockroach a good choice, and it's actually really been a pleasure working with them. And Mythical Games is an example of one of those logos that it's really fun to talk about. It's really great to have up on our website, because it's very well known, and for good reason.
Yeah, and I think they understand their business and where they're headed, Spencer, and they're reinventing things, which I think is and I think we're seeing that in lots of different industries. And I think the platform in which you choose allows you to get there faster and address these things, right? But I mean, Ritika, it's not just gaming, right? It's FinServe, it's retail, right? And I think they're all dealing with some of the same things, correct?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, if you think about financial services, no fail, global scale. You look at retail, omni experiences across channels, they all are looking at the same thing, which is same consistent experience both for their customer and even for the developer community. They don't want to have different experiences for the developers to develop over different platforms, and they don't want to offer different experiences through different channels, unless, of course, it's a unique differentiation that they're going after on a different channel. So you look at the industry, industry experience. For instance, if you look at contact center from Google, right? What we've done is we've taken the horizontal solution of CCAI, which is our contact center AI-enabled solution, and we've put in industry flavors on that. Whether it's, if you're a telco customer, what your needs are and the kind of customer demand you have is very different than a retail customer. So uniquely differentiating these solutions by industry verticals has been key to our strategy. And that's one of the reasons why, even in the first place with Mythical Games, as they were seeing whether it was accelerated cost due to hyper growth, they were able to come to us to learn from us some of the methodologies and use some of the tools that we use internally as well, to bring to bear in helping them scale that it's the most optimized way to scale through fully managed services, or whether it's on your infra costs or your management costs.
Yeah. And it's funny, we often get asked, oh boy, who's adopting this? Which vertical is doing X, Y, and Z? I'm like, all of them, all of them, everybody. They're all suffering from these problems. Like this digital transformation is not going away. Like I said, I think we're all dealing with scale, and we're all dealing with resilience, and we're all dealing I think a scale is not just the amount of transactions and data, but also like the global scale. The geographic scale becomes a big problem, right? And I think we, as just practitioners and technologists, I find this to be an interesting moment in time because, like you said, Spencer, I think this digital thing started with the web, and I was kind of there too at that moment in time. And the past 20 years has been pretty interesting. And there's a significant movement right now to become cloud native. And I think, remember about 8 years ago, y'all, when we talked about the cloud, and everybody's like, oh yeah, that's interesting. It's a different game today, right? And I feel like people are just they're starting, like a lot of the new stuff is just starting in the cloud. And if it's a existing business, they're moving to the cloud, right, Ritika? And I think it's it's all verticals, right? But I'm sorry, Ritika, did you want to just jump in? Because I think the vertical thing is actually pretty damn important.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to add to that. That's true. I mean, if you look about the database journeys in particular, like since we were talking about distributed, there are customers who are looking to just lift and shift and migrate. Because those are the workloads that come from ERP systems like the SAP. They need to bring in that data. Then there are customers who are happy just migrating to a newer infrastructure for scale or geo expansion, like we talked about. And then there's a third category of these transformative or transformed databases, or we digital native first, right? So having the ability to deliver all those three scenarios, whether you're migrating, modernizing, or transforming on that same infrastructure, is a pretty colossal task. It's not easy giving the same unified experiences on that. And especially, like you said, each of these experiences can vary by not just the region, like we talked about gamers in Korea, but also differentiated by different industries.
Yeah, and it's interesting, Ritika. I always talk about this. It's like lift and shift, move and improve, or just completely re-architect and rebuild. You know what I mean? I'm a marketer at heart. I got to have like little cute statements to kind of categorize these things, but it works. You know what I mean? But I think we're living in a world where I think, personally, I feel we're in this kind of transition to something that's going to come. Spencer, you and I have had some conversations about kind of what the future holds in terms of, compute and data. I mean, for that, we talk a lot about data. What do you think the future of all this is?
Well, one of the things that is shaping the future very decidedly is just how much money is available for investment in all of the companies that are making this digital transformation possible. And more money gets pumped in. I believe it doubled between 2020 and 2021. And that is creating a very white hot economy, in terms of what are the available resources. Think of programmers, for example, software engineers, product designers, product managers, everyone that you need to build a new product. That's really increasing the value of that labor and the scarcity of it. Right. So if you really want to succeed in the world going forward, you have to find ways to automate tasks, to use infrastructure that saves time, to use managed services that allow you not to have to build, for example, like a DevOps capability within your company. You can outsource that. But ultimately, I think a company that's in a retail vertical or a financial services vertical, in the world we live in today, it's actually become possible not to have a core competency anymore in terms of running systems yourself. And that actually allows a company to kind of get bare bones. Like, what do we actually need to hire people to do? Well, fundamentally, we need to build the next use case that adds value for our customers, not learn how to run it, not learn how to scale it. Right? And that's why these managed services are becoming as popular as they are. And you mentioned before just how hard SaaSification is. For Cockroach, building our cloud product that is fully managed started off as a small startup within Cockroach. Now it's a very large startup within Cockroach. And we've also realized that that's certainly not the end point. There are new sort of thinking about how you can go even further in terms of getting down to the sort of bare necessities of what you need to crank out additional value for your end customer without getting mired in things that are just shouldn't be core competencies anymore. And serverless is one of those new sort of approaches. And now we have, again, a small startup within Cockroach, along with the SaaSification side, to really to explore what it means to have a serverless database. So fundamentally, this is about removing more of the friction that's associated with allocating database resources and using them so that you can, in the case of a serverless database, very inexpensively use thousands or tens of thousands of instances of databases. And that allows us to give the database away for free, for a fairly generous free tier. And this is the future of everything. And the reason is because if you think about what the ideal developer experience would be, if you just want to get product out as quickly as possible, what can a developer build in their sort of local workstation or laptop where they could just hit a button and have that deployed and scaled globally? Like that's the cool thought experiment, right? How quickly can you bring that time to value down so that what you do is you create the product, and then all of the hard work on the day 0 and day 1 plus to infinity of running the thing and scaling it is done by other folks, and you're really happy to pay for that because you can drive a much lower total cost of ownership. So serverless has been a huge thing we've invested in, and it's also something that you see GCP investing in heavily. Across the board, all of their products are moving in that direction. And one of the most exciting things, is the execution layer for us, because if you wanted to realize this vision, you need a serverless stack from top to bottom. The database is somewhere near the bottom. There's lots of other bits of data infrastructure you need as well, and the execution layer is kind of at the top. Kind of what's behind in the back end behind the sort of operation when you hit a button in your mobile app, for example, that hits the back end, and all the operation has to happen in the cloud and then come back into your mobile app and update your display. And in order to truly realize this vision, we have to embrace partners. And the more advanced the partner is with their serverless journey, the better, right? Because we want to create a soup to nuts experience for a developer. Through all these layers that traditionally you had to manage and choose and so forth yourself. How do we do this now so that a developer can do it instantly and actually start for free, which is also cool. So it's not just the complexity of the whole job, it's the price point. And so this is a fundamental thing. We're actually we have a very thriving partnership with GCP in their Cloud Run product. And Cloud Run is essentially a serverless container as a service product. And it's a wonderful complement to Cockroach, and this is really just the start of that journey.
Spencer, I'm sorry, but I wish I was a developer today and not 20 years ago, because it just seems like it's so containerize a thing, dump it on Cloud Run, and it's just going to go. And by the way, I have this serverless database that's going to scale with it. Not have to worry about anything. Like I got confused in Subversion, and anybody who's old enough to remember, like that stuff killed me. I think it was the end of me as a developer, I think. So, and I don't know. I just feel like this whole thing gets easier and easier. Well, I think the problems we're solving are more difficult.
Problems get bigger, right?
That's right. That's right.
And the data gets bigger too.
Data too. That's right. And it's like, yeah, what's a distributed relational global database look like? I'm sorry, but dude, that's a pretty intense software engineering challenge to solve. And we're starting to hit the physical limits of what we have. Like we joke internally, Spencer, right? We're fighting the speed of light sometimes, right? And I think that's where we're at. But I think we're all fighting systems and all these things we always have. But I think this partnership has been huge for us. I think in many different ways. But it's a partnership for your customers as well, Ritika, and for the developers who are building on this. And so, what do you feel the future is for GCP from that point of view?
Yeah, so I think we are very, very committed to partners like yourselves. We want to be early in your partner journey. We want you to focus on delivering your solution, not your infra, for instance. And Spencer, you talked about Cloud Run, data flow, for instance, for data pipes. That's also another serverless product that I know you're adapting. So we want to make it really frictionless and seamless for you as a partner and your developer community so that you can focus on doing what you need to do is serve your customers, which is our joint customers too. So we will continue to, obviously, what excites us is investing in our infrastructure to make it much more resilient. It is, like I said, built with security. So you don't have to worry about the things that Jim made you run away from being a developer. And then on the non-technical side, I think we are continuing to be investing in our go-to-market programs, whether it has to do with sales alignment with our fields to help you sell, whether it's industry solutions to give you a differentiated view, or also whether it's procurement and management through the marketplace so that you don't have to worry about billing and support. So we are definitely continuing to invest in that, and that's what excites us, because we have seen the impact that our channel, our partner, and our ecosystem has on Google Cloud as a platform. And we are very excited about that. So I do want to say that we feel that we have the best experience in running open source projects and open source based like technologies for the past 20 years. So from our point of view, we just want, in a nutshell, we want ISVs and tech leaders to choose Google Cloud Platform as their platform to build, scale, and innovate.
Yeah. And honestly, Ritika, I think we're all ISVs now. You know, I mean, no matter what we're just all ISVs. I think we're all building, and I think finding the right platform that is conducive to not have you to deal with all the craziness. And I don't know, marketing's not so bad. I don't mind being on this side. I like talking about these things. It's interesting. So, I guess always stay curious, right? So, I wanted to thank you both. This is, I think we covered all of our points that we had talked about, and I think it was a great conversation. So, Spencer, thank you so much.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you, Ritika and Jim.
Ritika, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, and goodbye.
All right, y'all. Well, I hope everybody enjoyed this. You know, we're happy to work with anybody to talk deeper about these problems. I think there's a QA, so you know, please do ask questions and whatnot. And then if you want to learn more about Cockroach and GCP together, we put up a nice little handy page, cockroachlabs.com/GCP. Make it easy on y'all. All you got to remember is the two companies' names. So with that, thank you.